Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of That's So Craven, your number one source for all Fulham content. David Crave here, and people told me it was going to be a tough run of fixtures the last few games, but if anything, it's been tough for our opposition. First Spurs, then Brighton, and more recently Arsenal, 5 points from 9. And today we're going to be talking about how Fulham are going to make things just as tough for Liverpool on Saturday. Joining me, we've got two of your favourite That's So Craven podcasters. First of all, we've got Putney Perspective himself. As Scatman John would say, skibby-dibby-dib-ba-ba-ba-bo. It's Skibby. How you doing, Skibby?
I'm very good, thank you. And you know what? There's a story behind that. Scatman John did write that song about me. We met one time, Louisiana bar, and yeah, we hit it off, and there you go. And all the story is in the song. But no, happy to be here. Like you say, we're playing well. Favoured podcast member? I don't know where you got that information. Oh, is there a poll that I can see? And
I call everyone
my
your
ego?
favourite podcast members.
I'll create the poll, realise I'm last, and then I'll cry myself to sleep. But no, happy to be here. Thank you very much for that intro.
No worries. And look, really exciting today. The Pod Daddy's prodigal son is making a dramatic return. It's the lovely and ever entertaining Sam. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good. There must always be a Stark and Winterfell, and there must always be a Berenzi on the podcast. So I feel a bit like Sansa when Sansa goes back to Winterfell. It's not necessarily everybody's first pick, but she holds down the fort, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm sorry. It's a big deal when I return to do these things. But there's life. There is life outside, and sometimes life gets in the way of football. I've been watching Ted Lasso, and then I got nostalgic to be back in the fray, and the boys are doing good. And I was sick of the other two, and I just wanted to be with you guys. And I was like, how can I shoehorn myself in between Skibbity Doodah and David Crave? I love that David Crave has stuck the way that it has. I came up with that on the fly, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful thing. Anyway, let's get into it.
Yeah, I totally adopted that. It was my Twitter handle about 30 seconds after you came up with it.
It's so great.
Yeah,
so great.
But right, so let's get started. I think we've got to do the quick shout for the Discord, but I'm going to keep it nice and short because I want to get into the action. So there'll be a link in the pod. Sign up, get involved. Get chatting. It's great. You'll love it. That's all I'm doing. Right now, everyone that's joining us on the show today, please make sure get your comments in, get your observations over. Abuse us if you like. We are all big boys here. We can take it. So everything's on the table. We're going to primarily talk about Fulham, but if you want to talk about where Sam's been or Sam's new haircut, please feel free. We're up for that too. So. Well, first things first, let's have a little look back at Arsenal. And if you haven't heard Monday's podcast with Skibby and Jack, it was fantastic. And I well recommend you going back, downloading that and having a listen. It's the guys really got stuck into, the terrible refereeing performance, Fulham's excellent defensive performance, and Arsenal's rather bizarre corner-taking regime. Covered in detail, was really worth going back and listening to. Skibby, any final words on Sunday? How are you feeling in the cold light of day?
No, I think smashed it out on the pod. It was a great defensive performance. There was not much to say in an attacking sense, but I think given Arsenal's prowess, that was kind of expected. But yeah, I mean, Jim is right. Skibby's loving Burger more than Zhao at the moment. And dangerously, that was one of the comments that came out. Very controversial, but he does seem to be a more complete midfielder, and I'm going to stand by that until proven wrong. Until we start. I mean, the only thing I would say is Sander needs a few more goals in his game, probably from corners like Zhao did. But you know what? He's 6'5" unit. It's going to come, right? I mean, hopefully. But I stand by that, and I think there was some fantastic defensive performances. And you know what? It gives us confidence going into sort of Liverpool, right? Because Brighton is not an easy game. Arsenal, not an easy game. Arsenal really, I mean, their press was relentless. Like, people made some comments about Leno's kicking, and I was like, mate, from my perspective, like I was sitting 20 rows in the Hammersmith end, could see, when the ball comes back to Leno, took it out onto his right foot, so he was right in front of me. And I swear to God, I think he would get the ball out of his feet, and then Havertz would be no more than 2 strides away from him every time he got the ball out of his feet. And he had to get out of it quick. And, that's going to make you be a little bit less accurate. So I'm not going to have a go at Leno for that just because it was so relentless. But, going into these games back to back has been it could be quite a bit of a godsend, I think, in a way that it's going to be a similar game plan. There's going to be a heavy press from the front from Liverpool. And we're going to be ready, I think. And it also helps that Liverpool played last night. So, yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be a little bit optimistic.
Yeah, I'm very high. I'm very high on Fulham at the moment, as you can probably tell. Yeah, I mean, my take for what it's worth, I thought, very, very good defensive performance. The game plan really worked at keeping Arsenal at bay. Of course, we gave up a lot of possession to them, but we kept them at bay. We scored a fantastic goal ourselves. And, okay, we had a terrible refereeing performance, but if looking back, I'm not sure it really cost us, of any points in the game. So generally, really pleased. Sam, I'm sure you've watched the game and everyone's excited to hear your view. So give us your thoughts on the Arsenal game.
Oh, okay. Well, I was saying to you guys before we went live as well. I thought in general it was actually a really, really strong defensive performance because, as you said, like Arsenal was relentless in their press. But I actually thought we absorbed it really, really well. And considering Diop was there, it was really nice and really just gratifying to see that didn't actually change too much in the grand scheme of things. As Skibby said, Berg for me is just kind of come on leaps and bounds from when he's first got here, and he's so much more confident. I can't bring myself to love him more than Zhao, but I understand Skibby's perspective on that's okay. That's okay. Like I just didn't want to be that guy. I just didn't want to create like a gap between us. But like so, but you are right though. It's a more complete performer, and Polina was a kamikaze. This is actually like a refined, stronger depth within the midfield. I really love the partnership with Lukic at the moment. And to be honest, I'll shout out Jimenez first. I'm really appreciating Jimenez more and more because he's really kind of turned around his entire career, in my opinion. And I don't really know like how much longer he really has left in this kind of mode that he's currently in. But to see him kind of move away from being a target man to more just kind of like this well-rounded attacking striker that takes good opportunities and actually is running more and actually driving at defense more. It's just been really, really gratifying to see that over the last couple of weeks. And I'm not sure how much it's been highlighted yet, but I love Anthony Robinson. I absolutely love Anthony Robinson. I know we can talk about Iwobi being the player of the season, and I thought Iwobi had an excellent defensive performance as well. It's just a great performance overall. But it's maybe second to Iwobi or on par. I think Robinson has been so incredible this entire time, and each week I'm just loving him more. This has been the best season I think I've ever seen Robinson do. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Is that enough thoughts? I haven't done this in a while.
That's great. I completely agree. I completely agree on Anthony Robinson. I think it is so far been his best season so far, and wow, can we keep hold of him is the question, really.
I guess the interesting thing on that as well, though, just to quickly add a bit more. I mean, last year it was kind of Anthony Robinson was the guy, right? Now, halfway through this season, we've kind of got, I would count 3 or 4 in the running, right? You've got Iwobi being Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Dependable, anywhere on the pitch, he'll be fantastic. Anthony Robinson just doing what he does. I would say Kenny Tete has been fantastic. I think he's one of mine going under the radar. And then if Berger keeps up the way that he's playing, I mean, you've got to throw Sasha Lukic in there as well because he's stepped up. There's so many sort of games. There's so many players here that are just stepping up for their moments and trying to be that sort of the guy, Mr. Fulham. and it's just really outstanding to see.
Yeah.
Right. Jack and Dad aren't here, so let's fucking throw structure out the window. Let's just talk. What is going on in terms of because there's as Skibby just said, there's so many good performances. Like, is it silver or is it just momentum right now that everyone's building off of? What's your take on this? Because I feel again, I've been watching a lot of Ted Lasso. So is it just like optimism and positivity in the dressing room right now? Or is there something a little bit deeper? Let's get into the minutia, guys.
Go on, Dave.
I think it's it's a little bit of everything. I think it's a little bit of good recruitment. I think it's certainly a lot to do with Marco Silva creating like a great camp, a great place to play football. The morale in the camp, we were saying that pre-season looked as strong as it had ever been. So I think there's partly that. I think that tactically Silva's, got it right more than wrong this season. And we do have we built this momentum as being a really tough side to beat. And actually this year, the first time we're dominating more games than we had. Now that's not look back at Arsenal or the first half at Brighton, after that statement, but generally we've been dominating more games than we have in previous years. So things have just kind of come together, I think. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's one thing, but if you're going to push me on that, I probably would say Marco Silva. Skibby, what do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think whenever a manager comes in and they talk about a project, this is the project. So when, look at West Ham. They brought in a manager, Lopetegui. They expected overnight results. They wanted to be, we won the Europa Conference League, therefore we're going to be pushing on for... But if you don't have the foundation to push on and actually build something special, it's going to fail. And that's what we're seeing at sort of clubs like West Ham. And I think for me, Marco, he was very fortunate that he had a very strong squad when he came into the Championship. But nevertheless, he had a 5-year plan. And it's always going to be a bigger picture, a bigger project of this is how I want to play football. This is where I want to be. And these are the players. And, you can bring in certain individuals to make that work. And for me, Marco has built this fantastic environment. He's kept a lot of key people around as well to the best of his ability. I mean, Mitrovic and Palhinha were obviously priced out of staying, but he's built this core squad of Wilson, Kearney, certain players who played with us in the Championship, but also in the Premier League. And then, Harrison Reed. I'm trying to think of some others around there, but I'm Wilson, sure there are plenty. But it's then, adding in the quality. And I think that goes into two things with Silva is, one, adding quality players who will make the team better, but overall, will they be a fit for the atmosphere, for the actual dressing room? Because, you look at Man United, they go out and buy talent, don't give a rat's ass about, whether they're going to be good people or whether they're going to get on with everyone, but that's the other side of recruitment that no one really thinks about. And I think what we've done perfectly is Tony Khan and his team and the recruitment guys picking out players that fit the statistics, all that kind of stuff that he loves from an NFL background. But then it's also bringing in Marco to say, is this player going to fit into your dressing room? Will you be able to use him in the way that we want to? And I think that has been absolutely crucial. And, he's been taking on players such as Iwobi, Andreas Pereira, Jimenez, who have been, and Leno even, who have all been written off at their current clubs, basically. I don't think Iwobi was Iwobi was a starter for Everton, but he wasn't thought of that highly. But to now come into a team like Fulham, work under Silva for a year, Lukic being a fantastic example, and now pushing to be that absolute star player, that's all down to Marco for me. I think it's Marco with a sprinkling of recruitment kind of team analysis. But for me, it's all down to Marco to not just to bring in the player, but also nurture the player and bring them into making them feel like they are that star player.
I want to highlight as well one thing that you've just said, because I'm actually at the point now, and I've said it a couple of times, but I'm actually at the point now where I almost expect any player that Marco brings in at the moment, I give them literally about a 10-month grace period. because I'm just conditioned now that I know in 10 months' time they're going to fit the starting lineup and they're going to be great. And if they can do that quicker, I'm even happier. But the fact that I've got so much trust in him that I allow that, I can't think of a single manager that I would actually allow 12 months, especially in the Premier League. That says volumes.
Hopefully, we'll get onto this, I'm sure, in a bit more detail, but hopefully Smith Rowe's one of those players that's just going to take time to acclimatise to the system, and maybe we'll see the best of him second half of the season, maybe, start of next year. I don't think we've seen the best of him so far. We've seen flashes. But we're now all of a sudden starting to get a little bit concerned, I think, amongst the fan base that he can really go missing sometimes for games. And
shall we do it? Shall we be controversial? Shall we talk about it? Can we?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think it's important because I think, there's a lot of positivity around what's going on at the moment. But it's also important to kind of look at areas where we can, potentially do better. And, we need to see a better performance from our record signing. We need to see more consistent performances from our record signing. Now, there's one person who can bring that out in him. I think you're right. I think it's Marco Silva. And but it just might be that he's going to take some time after a couple of years off, and maybe we're being a bit harsh on him. Maybe he hasn't played a lot in the last few seasons, and maybe this is quite a natural thing that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get to his best. And we didn't pay 30 million or whatever we paid for him for this year. We paid for it for the next 5 years. So it's still time for him to come good. But we do, it would be nice to see him make a bit more impact on the game.
Skibby, what you reckon? I want to hear you. I want to hear your 1-2 punch on this.
David in the chat has just stolen my thunder, but I was exactly going to use the Lukic example of Lukic went completely missing in games. Come the summer, I think, and if you listen back to our podcast in the summer, I think I was one of those who was saying I actually wouldn't mind if Lukic left because he's just not a fit for the team. He just seems to go missing, and it's almost like the pace just seems too much for him. But then, you give him time, you give him a chance for our tactics to adjust and for Marco to bring him in and use his kind of specialities. I mean, I think he was helped with Zhao leaving, but I think for ESR, it will take time. I've said before, he's moved on from a team who could dictate play. If he didn't step up, then Odegaard would, Havertz would, or Saka would, and he could go missing and just turn up for those certain moments. But in this Fulham team where you're supposed to be the star, we can't afford for you to go missing. So I think that's going to take time for him to adjust to being that star player. But I think it also comes down to the tactical setup. I think he looked very uncomfortable against Arsenal. He was playing off the right of centre, sort of the central right midfield, covering for Iwobi when we went into a back five. And he didn't look comfortable. And he normally comes off of the left, and that's normally where we've seen his successes. So I think against Spurs, where he had an okay game, he was sort of off the left with Nelson, which again helps because it's a club mate that he grew up with at Arsenal. I think that familiarity and just learning the Marco's way is just going to take time. I think we'll be optimistic if we think he's going to really hit the ground running in the second half of the season. But I do think that, come July, with a full pre-season under his belt, and we know exactly the identity of how we're going to play and how he fits into that, because Marco will say that you are, the sort of catalyst to the way that we want to play, and that should give him a load of confidence. But I think we'll start seeing him more consistently next season, if not slightly before. But I think it's going to take time. That's the only thing I can say. But I haven't been that impressed with him, and to be honest, I could see him being dropped for Liverpool personally.
Ooh.
I agree. I think he's very much at risk of getting left out at Liverpool. And because we've seen kind of Andreas come off the bench in the number 10 and be busy, and
It's the work rate, isn't it?
It's the work rate. Yeah, it's the work rate. And if you've not, if Smith Rowe's not contributing, not scoring, not assisting, not really impacting the game, then you need the work rate at very minimum, particularly in games where you're not going to have a lot of the ball. So I think that's a change I would I would expect to see on Saturday, and it does make sense. Of course, it's not flavour of the month at the moment with a lot of people, Andreas, but of course, there was the whole recent saga with the interview. Funny enough, just before we went live, Skibby shared an Instagram post showing that he's now joined a podcast, I believe. Looks like maybe a Brazilian podcast.
I believe,
kind of.
it's a Brazilian talking about Premier League.
Right. I mean, my immediate thought was, oh God, please just keep your head down, Andreas, and focus on your football. But
I mean, if
what's your thoughts?
So, what are you going to say, Skibby?
Stupid. It's just the timing, isn't it? It's just like, just stay out of the radar for a little bit. So I mean, the PR of Fulham must be pulling their hair out, being like, "What are you doing?" But I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. If he's talking about, is basically being a pundit and talking about other teams in the league and not talking about himself and where he wants to be in January, then fair enough. But yeah, I thought something was up when I saw there was a lot of engagement recently on Instagram. He was sort of saying like, "Come on, Fulham," and all this stuff, and trying to get behind the boys. And before the interview had come out, so obviously something had gone on beforehand. But he's now trying to sort of do the same thing again, and I get it, but it's just, I hope he doesn't say anything stupid, because we're just starting to get over it all. But yeah, it's just not the greatest PR move. Let's go under the radar for at least a month or so before joining a podcast.
I actually really feel for him, because he's been I've said it all season. I understand why he was playing centre mid for a bit, but objectively, I will always prefer him in that 10 role. I think he suits it so much better, and he provides so much more. And I'm really big on not moving people around. I'm really big on let them play their main positions. I don't really like shoehorning people in the side just to shoehorn it, even though I understand the logic. So I really feel for him. He's been asked to play something outside of his wheelhouse, and he's done the best that he kind of could, but he's always kind of lacked defensively a little bit, just because he's not that sort of player. But that's originally not why we loved him before. So I can't hate on him too much for that. And in a lot of ways, I'm actually really glad that he actually did have a good performance in the 10 against Arsenal, because it actually jogs people's memory of why we love him in the first place. So I understand his frustration. I don't speak Portuguese, so it's not going to offend me too much, whatever he says. But look, I mean, I'm not gonna criticize the emotional intelligence of Premier League players, because that's not what I asked them to do. They are in a difficult, high stressful position. This is me being very politician right now. But genuinely, I want the best for him. And I actually think the best for him is probably starting against Liverpool, whilst Smith Rowe is a little bit uneasy. But just let him play where he's best at playing. Because if Smith Rowe can't do it, somebody else can.
Yeah, agreed. I suppose, it's a good time to talk about the team for Liverpool. We've spoke, obviously, about, it looks like there's kind of unanimous support here that Andreas should get the nod over Smith Rowe. There's going to be a forced change, because, of course, Bassi picked up his 5th yellow card, so he's now suspended. And there's 2, maybe 3 options here. So I put it to you guys. I think first, we don't know what the situation is with Anderson. There was some talk that he was back in training at the back end of last week. Will they rush Anderson back in for this one? And if so, does he play left and move, keep Diop on the right-hand side, or does Anderson take his natural position and move Diop? Another option is we might see Cuenca make his league debut, which scares me a little bit. It's Anfield, Liverpool away. It's not the ideal place to make your debut. But he's gonna, that's what he's here for. He's here to challenge and provide cover for when he's needed. And the only other bit of a wild card option I think we have is I noticed Silva in his press release pre Arsenal, or it was when Anderson was first injured, mentioned that Tete can also fill in at centre back. So that's an option too. Bring Castagna in and Tete comes into centre back. So there's three kind of options. I mean, what do you think's most likely? And come Saturday.
I mean, the one I would love is Anderson to come in at left centre back and Diop to stay right centre back. Because if you look at the time under Parker, Anderson actually played left centre back for us. So it's not unfamiliarity for him. So that's a possibility, but obviously fitness is a question. If he can play there, then that would be my primary option. Cuenca, Diop, I think it fits the dynamic that we normally play, being ball playing centre back with a bit of a brute. Cuenca being the ball playing centre back, he's pretty good with the ball at his feet. And to be honest, when he came on against Arsenal, he actually seemed very aggressive, which I liked. He was kind of jumping over Gabriel Jesus and such to like get the ball, and I liked that about him. I guess that's the other option is, do you go to a potential 5 with Diop in the middle, Tete right centre back, Cuenca being the left centre back, with sort of either Iwobi as sort of the right back, or the right wing back, and Robinson being the left wing back. So potentially that's an option as well. So for example, it's basically a back 4, but more often than not, it will go into a back 5. That's probably going to be option 2. But I can't see. It'll be difficult to sort of see Anderson come back in and Diop get moved. I don't think that would be an option, but I think the best option for us would be Anderson if he is fit, if he can make through a game, even if he can't make through the whole game. Probably worth trying him out and then bringing on Cuenca to sort of see the game out and trying to sort of combat it that way. But I mean, we saw, if you watched Liverpool last night, we saw there was vulnerabilities there. They didn't look that comfortable. They had a high press, which similar to Arsenal, but would Cuenca be the right person to deal with that press, especially when it's on your debut, when you're not used to Premier League speed? Is probably a higher risk than you'd think. So for me, you'd probably want to try and take a risk with Tete instead of Cuenca, if I'm honest. With that high press, he would just panic potentially and lose the ball. But that's kind of my view on that sort of back line.
Yeah, it's what about you, Sam? Do you think what would you like to see? Put it that way.
It's really hard. I don't really know what I would like to see, just because if Liverpool have kind of proven anything this season, is that they're extremely aggressive, and they can definitely concede, but they're way more likely to score because that seems to be their MO at the moment. And yeah, their attacking prowess is, they're top of the table. Like it's pretty clear like how strong this change in management has actually been for them. It's really hard, like, because part of me thinks that you start Cuenca, the side is cohesive enough to probably compensate for any mistakes he might make if there's like a back 3 of Anderson, Diop, and Cuenca. The only thing then is you'd kind of sacrificing potential attacking options as a result. So I don't really like the idea of Tete playing centre back, just purely because of Liverpool's wing play being as strong as it is. Like I want that like as covered as physically possible. And the idea of like Castagna there, I really like Castagna, but I don't love Castagna for his defensive prowess. I love him for his touch and just for essentially what he can provide in terms of like crossing and just being a safe pair of hands. I think I would want a back 3 though, just in this, for instance. I think if Anderson was fully fit, I would say Anderson and Cuenca with a little bit more chest. But in this scenario, I think I want a back three. Although I don't really know what I want against Liverpool in general, because I think they're really, really, really strong. But I do think we have enough defensive prowess to at least. It's hard because part of me feels that we should do a back three, but also part of me just also thinks maybe just put Cuenca and Diop and then just go guns blazing. It's really hard. I think the conservative in me says a back three though.
I think it will, I think what's probably most likely is Cuenca comes in, as you say. And, there's a bit of a blueprint for these games now, like Arsenal, we saw it at City away, where, we can transition to a back five a back three by moving Iwobi back to kind of right wing back. And then Tete tucks in. You're right about Liverpool's attack. We've got to be wary of them down the wings. I think they've got the best attack in world football. If you think about the depth they have, the players, the attacking players on their bench, Jota and whoever it will be, could be Diaz, getting pretty much any other team in the league and across Europe, I think. So they've got so many attacking options. And we, our fullbacks, I think, are going to have their work cut out for them. So I think you're right. I wouldn't want to disturb that too much. But I do think that we'll see this blueprint of our more defensive formation on Saturday, kind of continuation of Arsenal. And that's why I probably am not expecting too many other changes, because I think Adama's a big part of that. He didn't have the best game on Saturday, but I think he'll get more opportunities to get in behind against Liverpool. Hence why I think he might keep his position. Sorry, Sam, you going to add something?
Well, I was just going to pose to the group as well. I'm like, what Liverpool are we getting? They're just coming off a 1-0 against Girona. Is it Girona? I'm pretty sure they played in the Champions League. And they've come off a pretty heavy game against it was Newcastle, where they had 3 scored against them. So, my question to you guys is: are we playing a wounded animal, or are we playing a team in reform right now? What Liverpool are we going to get? I like to pose these questions.
No, it's a great question, because you're right. Even heard Arne Slot say last night he didn't recognise his team last night, which, so that. And then before that, they were away at Newcastle, as and they dropped points, which for the first time in feels like ages. I think since they lost to Forest, I think, in September. So you look at the last 2 and you think, well, maybe they're in a little bit of a lull. Maybe the fixture pile-up's getting on top of them, and that might present an opportunity for us. And that's what the hope that I'll be clinging on to. Don't look further back than that, because, I'll tell you what happened the 2 games before that. They beat Liverpool. They beat Man City and Real Madrid 2-0, both games. So ignore those 2. But the last 2 in particular, I think, have shown that there might just be a little bit of fatigue settling in, and I think that gives us cause for optimism.
Skibby, what do you reckon?
No, I think we're guilty of it, aren't we? Looking at a selection, looking at a fatigued team and getting our hopes up. Because I remember playing Liverpool last season, and, they had some players with 92 on their back and never heard of them. And I think they had a midfield of Endo, Gravenberch, and I think it wasn't even McAllister. It wasn't Soboslai, he was injured. It was somebody else, really random. And you're like, gotta fancy it. And then they absolutely dominated the midfield. So it's one of those things about not overestimating the sort of the players, because they've got a very, very good squad. And I do think that there is a bit of luck in a way that we're playing them at the sort of the frantic festive fixtures, as they were, where they are just playing like 3 games in a week. I mean, so are we, but at the same time, we're not flying to Italy and back in the same week. Yeah. So that takes a lot off of you and takes its toll. I think I even saw that Villa were playing in Germany last night, and they had a chartered plane ready to take them at midnight after the game and get them back for sort of 2 to 3 a.m. at home. And then, you've got do you have a rest day or do you have a half? It's really hard to sort of understand where you actually go from there, and your body clock's all messed up. So I do think that there's an element of playing them at the right time, because they've had injuries to Jota, Chiesa. They didn't travel to Girona, so they've had to highly depend on Diaz, Gakpo, and Salah, and Darwin Núñez, who is chaos but doesn't necessarily hit the target. But you're heavily relying on Salah now. I think he got 2 goals against Newcastle. Needed him last night to put away the penalty. It's just almost like if we can silence Salah, then you've got a really good chance of getting something out of the game. And there is nobody better in the league, or even I would say even in the world at the moment, to take on Salah and than Robinson. And I mean, I loosely say the world because I can't really think of, unless you're Davies at Bayern Munich, I can't think of a better left back who's as athletic and as pacey as Robinson, who can just read the game so well. So, I mean, that is a fantastic matchup. And then on the vice versa, you've got Traore, Adama, who is easily one of the fastest players in world football, and he's going to be coming up against Trent Alexander-Arnold, who it just isn't very good defensively. So surely you've got your matchup built there, because Salah's not going to track him. So I mean, for me, it's these sort of matchups on the field, which is if we can control the ball and sort of soak up the pressure, and then look for that out ball on that sort of our left hand side, then we could start to see a bit of success. But yeah, it's just a really tough call in terms of a Liverpool side that's absolutely flying in the league at the moment.
You've mentioned Robinson and Traore, and I think they're good shouts for like massive disruption. Is there anyone else key that you think will potentially be our linchpin outside of the obvious ones that we've spoken about? And we've obviously mentioned Berger before, and not getting like a goal, but him being a key component. Is there anyone else that you can shout out that you reckon is going to be the key difference?
I think it's Berger Lukic, isn't it? I think they're the McAllister. We're very fortunate is going to be suspended for this game because the game against Everton got postponed. So no McAllister. So that means that they've got a bit of a makeshift midfield. Again, contradicting myself literally 30 seconds ago where we talked about midfield and getting overexcited. But
lean into it.
But I mean, Curtis Jones is a very good player, don't get me wrong. But Gravenberch and Soboslai, it'll be interesting to see who comes in for McAllister. I think he played last night.
See, for me, Skibby, I think that's like, that's like going to the bar and asking for a Prony and them saying, "Oh no, we've only got Birra Moretti." Fine, quality. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got so many good options. You can't. I just don't see that being a big blow to them. I just think it just gives another great player an opportunity. So I'm not really taking too much about the injuries, but sorry, I've interrupted you there. If you want to carry on,
I was just going to say the interest. Like, they're very intricate players. They make things happen. But what we've got in Berger and Lukic are two disruptors, two very very physical disruptors. And I mean, if you look at some of the highlights of Berger against Arsenal, there was Odegaard and Rice trying to make things happen, and he was just leaning on them, standing on them, and just protecting the ball. And I think that is going to be key, because I don't think that sort of players like Gravenberch and whoever comes in to that sort of central defensive midfielder partnership with Gravenberch, I don't think they've got the physicality on Berger and Lukic. I think if we're able to really disrupt them and basically just be a physical presence, then we've seen from Berger that he can win the ball back and then start to look at getting the ball quickly to Raul, who can then spray out one of these nice passes out to the wing, which we saw on, I think it was a half volley out to Iwobi. So I think that's going to be the key, is winning, sort of creating that mid block, allowing us to sort of pick up the ball in the midfield and then allowing us to sort of break. And I think for me, it's Berger and Lukic who will allow us to do that. I think for me, in a defensive setup that's potentially going to be Cuenca and Diop, you're not going to have some worldy passes. It's you're going to be, we won the ball, we're going to lump it up to potentially Jimenez and who look for the knockdown. So anything creative would probably come from our central midfield, I think.
I was going to answer
question,
your question. Oh, sorry. So I was just going to answer that, your question about who else is key. I do think that Raul, he might have found a bit of form again. So he'd gone about 4 or 5 games of outscoring, and then he had one shot, one goal on Saturday. So maybe it's the start of another little purple patch for him. If his tail's up and if he's confident, because if he's not going to get many chances, you want a confident striker who's going to put them away. So yeah, he could be a key player, I think, as well on Saturday.
Do you think it's going to largely just come down to physicality? Because then, like, my only reservation is there will come a point where basically we'll have to swap out either Kenny or Lukic at some point, and then at that point, it's going to be if we're swapping out for, say, like Tom Kenny or whatever. It's going to be going to the bar, and, to use your analogy, asking for a Peroni and then getting like a Negroni or something like that. It's not necessarily going to be what we need at that time. But is that going to be enough? Because do we have to be physical for the full 90 minutes, or can we allow some leeway to actually bring in players like Tom Kenny in this situation, or does it have to be balls to the wall, be strong?
Skibby, Tom Kearney's suspended, so we know he won't be an option. But there are other.
I know, but like,
I appreciate that. What do you think, Skibby? I think you're probably best equipped to answer that.
It's all about legs. You don't have to be. For me, you don't have to be physical. I think basically bringing in that analogy of what you mentioned. So as long as Smith Rowe comes off the bench or Andreas comes off the bench and is running and actually putting the work in to sort of get bodies in behind the ball, then I think that still is as effective. I think, Berger and Lukic will be absolutely instrumental in that muscle holding the ball up and preventing just anything happening in that midfield area. But I think for Andreas Pereira to come off the bench potentially if he doesn't start, or vice versa for Smith Rowe, as long as they're putting the legs in and trying to get onto the ball, then that would be just as effective, especially as the game goes on. I think Josh King is a fantastic example there. I mean, against Brighton, I want to say, he came off the bench and was just a little terrier, just nipping and kicking and just letting them know you're there. And I think that is just as effective as someone who is a seasoned pro at holding up the ball and being physical in that midfield area.
Yeah, I think Silva will try and keep the shape of the team as solid as possible. Throughout the game. I'm not sure we've got, unless we're chasing the game and need a goal. I think he'll stick with Berger and Lukic, and can see them playing 90 minutes just to kind of, give us that steal in midfield. But if we're chasing the game, then we have options. As I say, with the bench is decent, even with these injuries. We've got Josh King, we've got either Andreas or Smith Rowe, we've got Harry Wilson. They can all play centrally and make a difference. So I'm pleasing as well to see Muniz, who seems to be working quite hard off the bench now, which is good because he kind of his substitute appearances pre-Brighton when he started were pretty disappointing. He didn't really impact the game, but he looked quite up for it against Arsenal when he came on. He ran the channels and worked hard. So that's what you need off the bench, I think, on Saturday.
Would you like to see more of Josh King at the moment? Like, is now the kind of time while the squad is as cemented as it is, to start indoctrinating players like Josh King as early as possible? Because we ummed and ummed a little bit with Luke Harris, and for me it didn't really get the full way. But do you reckon Josh King's in a better position to actually fully make the starting lineup and actually fully kind of become a regular off the bench kind of player?
I think it depends on the opposition. So I wouldn't expect him to get minutes on Saturday. Maybe if we're losing the game and, maybe comfortably losing the game, he might give him a run out. But I don't think he would use him to either to impact the game basically on Saturday just because of the opponents. But Southampton, yeah, I could easily see him getting an opportunity off the bench. I know Jim's popped in the comments for a start, but I don't think he's there yet, and I'm not sure he comes in for. So I think it's I think we'll see him a little bit more and more off the bench in games, particularly at home, where particularly if we're ahead as well. So Brighton was a good opportunity because we were ahead in the game. Also, we needed bodies at that point, but he proved that he could do it, as Skibby said. So I think as the season goes on, we might see him feature a little bit more frequently off the bench. But I don't see a start anytime soon, unless it's the cup.
No, and I think just to add to that, I think for me, the centre of the park is very crucial to the game. And putting someone as potentially as inexperienced as Josh King in the heart of that, in the middle of a game, it just doesn't sit well with me. I think we're more likely to see what we saw against Spurs, which was Sessegnon come off the bench, move Iwobi central, or just let Sessegnon roam. Because, yeah, he may be, out of form, hasn't really played much football in the last sort of year, but at least he's kind of got a seasoned pro head on his shoulders that can grind out something. I just feel like it's just too much to rely on Josh King in such a crucial game, or not even a crucial game, but a very hard game, which could potentially ruin his confidence. Not to mention the age of the lad. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know exactly what he's thinking, but I know what I'd be thinking, which is at 17 years old, growing up watching the Premier League, and I'm on the pitch with Mo Salah, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, I'd be a bit starstruck,
Yeah, so true.
But I think, I can't see him starting for Southampton. I think he'll play more minutes in those games. I think somebody even mentioned in the comments, which was like the run of games where we've got Ipswich, Watford for 100% you'll see him. West Ham and Leicester. I think those are definitely the games that you'll see him in. Hopefully we do the business earlier on, and we're able to sort of be a bit more comfortable in the game. But even then, I think if Leicester are chasing the game, for example, I still think Josh King is still someone to bring into that environment. I think just where we're under the caution, you're being pressed heavily, by Szoboszlai and things like that, and I just don't think that's the game to sort of bring him into, is the right environment. But yeah.
No, I tend to agree. So it's we've had an interesting recent experiences with Liverpool. Last year we played them 4 times, of course, because we had them in the cup. But when we went to Anfield last year, it was a similar time, if I recall, and no one really gave us a chance, and we put up a really good show, didn't we? I mean, we were 3-2 up with about 8 minutes left, much to everyone's surprise. So it was only because of some literally unbelievable goals from Liverpool that we kind of, ended up losing that game. And actually, the last goal, I'd argue that there was a foul on Bobby Reid in the build-up. It should have been disallowed, but it shows that we can go there and be brave. And if we go there and be brave, we might get some rewards. The cup games, I think, came at a bit of a tricky time for us. We had some injuries and AFCON was on, so Iwobi and Bassi were missing. I do think if they were available for those games, it might be in a slightly different outcome, because we only narrowly lost. I mean, we lost 2-1 at Anfield despite being ahead, and then drew 1-1 in the second leg at Craven Cottage. And then you've also got the game later in the year, which was, I think, towards the end of the season, where we started to filter out a little bit at the end of last year. We ended up losing 3-1 at home. But generally, we give them the game, is the point I'm making. And I think if we're brave like we were last year, and we seem a bit more defensively solid this year, I think there is reason to be hopeful and optimistic. Do you feel the same? I tend to feel that there's an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably go into things like predictions now. I'm leaning towards 1-1. I think we'll give them a really good game. I think we can actually match their energy and absorb it quite well. From everything that I've seen this season, I think obviously it would be better if we had like fully fit Anderson, fully fit Bassi. Then we could actually give them a proper game, and then I actually wouldn't be able to call that. I think we can actually push them to a draw. But I think I can't see it being a high scoring game. It'll either be a high scoring game or it'll be a really boring 1-1 slugfest. But in either of those situations, I'd come away from it pretty content because that's better than a 4-0 battering, which I don't actually think will happen. I'm around wood now, so I'm going to knock on it. But yeah, I'm calling a 1-1.
1-0 Skibby.
I think when you look at the last game that we played, like you say, it was similar time of year, and you know, a McAllister absolute freakish goal. 99 times out of 100, it doesn't go in. It goes to the back of the stand, but happens to go in the top corner. Fair enough, you hold your hands up. Then Trent plants a free kick into the top corner, in off the bar, I think it was, and you're like, okay, fair enough. It's Trent. Here's what he does. 99 times out of 100, you know, he doesn't find that top corner. But then Endo out of nowhere, I even forgot he was a Liverpool player at this point. Absolutely cements one into unstoppable. And you just couldn't believe our luck, you know, that we fought really hard that game. And I think, you know, we got a goal from Tete, I believe, from a corner.
Yeah, from a corner.
Yeah, hadn't seen that in a while. But you know, we were under a lot of pressure at that time, and it did seem to sort of come across, against the run of play. And then, you know, we started to sort of build a little bit, and then fell off a little bit, and Liverpool controlled the ball, and then I think Kearney came on, and sort of chipped the ball to the back stick for Bobby Reid to put us 2-1 up at the time, and with 3 minutes left, if anything, of normal time, and we were dreaming. And I think that for me is the key: is that you will get opportunities against Liverpool, and if we're able to silence Salah, that is going to be absolutely key, because they are heavily relying on him this year, much more than normal. And I just don't think that, similar to Arsenal, where we were quite comfortable defensively just because they didn't have an out-and-out striker who was able to sort of make things happen. And I think that Darwin Núñez can run in behind, but he's just not as clinical as you may think that he actually is. But so for me, I think silence Salah. I think if we are able to win that midfield battle and get the ball out to the wing and use those key matchups that we talked about, then I think that we could definitely give them a good game. I think Fulham will score. I think we're on a run at the moment of consecutive games that we've scored in the Premier League, which is so I think that will continue. But it's just the animal that is Liverpool. You know, they are top of the league for a reason. They always have the infamous atmosphere at Anfield, which I don't believe in. But you know, when things start to go their way, that cop does get very loud. So if you're able to, if you silence the team, you silence the cop, and that is something which would definitely work in our favour. The frustration comes out. But yeah, I think for me, I would say it's going to be 2-1 Liverpool, personally. But
yeah,
I would definitely see a good game. And it's one of those games, and I think Jack mentioned it in the last one, which was, as long as we have a good performance, that's all you want. Or it might have actually been you, Dave, but a good performance. If you go down without a whimper, you're frustrated, your weekend's ruined, and you just think, what are you doing? But if we went to Anfield, went toe-to-toe with Liverpool, and came away 2-1 loss, I'd kind of take that, especially with the run that we're on. I just want to be able to sort of compete with these sort of teams and give us something to sort of shout about. And especially if any Liverpool mates text you as well and say, unlucky there, you actually gave us a good game. That would be quite nice, especially if you're saying, you did a better game than, Real Madrid gave us.
I think we're actually poised. I think we're in a great position now where we've kind of got over our giant killer moment. I think we're at the stage now where we can go to, say, Man U, and then there's a realistic opportunity that we might beat them. we can, I mean, as we've seen the last couple of times we played Arsenal, there's a realistic chance that we will beat them or at least go toe-to-toe. So we've kind of, it's not unusual that we might actually give teams like Liverpool a run for their money, which I'm incredibly proud about. I'm glad I have a platform to actually say how proud I am about that. And yeah, I think we will get that. Sorry, Dave. You take it home.
My prediction: 3-1 Fulham.
I can't accept that. No, that's ridiculous.
Well, look,
that's something that my dad would say. That's bullshit, man.
Sam, I tell you what, the last two games I predicted 3-1 to Fulham against Brighton, and then I predicted a 2-1 loss to against Arsenal. So not bad. And then today, I just think these big teams they have a wobble in the season, and we might have just seen Liverpool at the start of theirs dropping points to Newcastle and having a pretty poor performance against Girona. I think that we might surprise them. I think that we might defensively put in a good show and maybe take our chances. Maybe Traore makes up for the Man City game away earlier in the season. So I don't know why. I just fancy it. I fancy us. So I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to say 3-1 Fulham. And my God, wouldn't we all be pretty buzzing on Saturday evening if that was the case? I'd certainly be watching Match of the Day. That's for sure.
It's rogue, but it could be beautiful. And if it is, then I will take it. I will take it with both hands.
Good. Well, before we wrap up, I did notice on our Discord, we have this little section called Just Ask Sam. And Skibby put a little message out before the pod today to see if anyone had any questions for Sam. And normally Sam answers them in very much Sam's way on the Discord himself, but decided that we'll do it live. So, Sam, this is for, and I've seen you've already answered it, but you're going to have to answer it live. So we'll go back. So we've got, it's from MYS 2020, which is Mark, who has been on the pod before. And he's got two questions. One is a serious one and one's a not so serious one. So the first one is you get to add two new rules to the beautiful game, one serious, one not so serious. What would they be? So what do you think? What's the serious one and what's the not so serious one, Sam?
I'll be really honest. I feel like I answered them quite seriously because I am very tired right now. It's just clicked over 12 a.m. in the morning, midnight, as some people would say. I'm delirious at this point and dehydrated as always. I've actually gotten kind of serious because my brain isn't quick enough to be witty at this time. So I actually thought this was quite a good one. So in exactly the same way as tennis does, coaches and captains, you can debate which one does that. Although I kind of like the idea that it would probably be the captain, because then that would kind of give the captain like a little bit more role. You get 3 challenges of a ref's decision per game. And then so if you're going to bust them all out, then you're just going to waste a whole bunch of time. But then that's what you use VAR for, because then it goes to a forum and then you actually decide whether that was the right call that the ref made. I think that would actually be a good use of VAR, aside from the bollocks that it's actually used for. And then the ref just ducking away to just kind of randomly check on some decisions nowadays. I don't like that. I like the idea of it being a little bit more interactive and captains actually having a say. And I like the idea of captains actually having a more interactive role. And the other one is literally just golden goal, because golden goal, I don't know why it's
every game golden goal.
I'm not sure every game. I'm not sure every game golden goal, but like at least for cup games, like outside of like after extra time. Because I hate penalties. Because for me, right, penalties actually kind of undermine the game that's already been had. Because, you can be a pretty average side, park the bus after literally going 0-0 or 1-0, 1-1. And then if you've just been practicing penalties for the whole time, you can handle pressure better than the other team, then you can sink that away. But I want a goal in real time. You know, I want that. And I just think golden goal is kind of hilarious as a concept in any way, because it's literally just like, just throw everything in the kitchen sink. And I just kind of like it for that. So those are my two. We can discuss that if you want, but
they're both really good shouts. I mean, we'd have to probably add about an hour to the game to accommodate both of those things. But that aside, I think there's a good answer. I just seen David Wellington. He's popped something in the comments, and he said his what he'd add to the beautiful game is penalty shootout before extra time for half a goal, meaning that there's a guaranteed winner at the end of extra time. I mean, what do we think about that? It's bizarre, half a goal.
Do you know what? That would be really exciting though, because then because if you've scored, say, 3 penalties or 4 penalties, that gives you 2 extra goals. Then if you have to make that up in extra time, that would be exciting, wouldn't it? So if you're like an extra 2-0 down, and you're like, all right, we've got to go for it in extra time, boys. Like, it's even harder. I think that would be quite interesting.
I just get logistically a bit confused, to be honest. But like I'm trying to my dyslexic little brain is just trying to figure out how that would work in any kind of concept. But I can look, anything that adds like pressure and jeopardy, I'm about.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all good.
Or if you had a penalty shootout, which is sudden death, and the winner of the sudden death penalties before extra time gets a 1-goal advantage going into extra time.
Yeah, well, I think that's along the lines of what David Wellington was saying, but he said it would be half a goal that you'd get rather than a full goal going into it.
I mean, half a goal just seems stupid because but then when you finish the game like 2.5 goals to 0.
Yeah.
That's where I'm broken. So I'd have to be a full goal, but
have to be a full goal. Yeah, I agree. Good suggestions. Well, listen, Just Dad Sam is on the Discord group. Get in there, ask your questions. Normally, they're not as serious as this. Normally, they're just about the world, and Sam gives you his advice. He's like an agony aunt. He's a very own agony aunt. So please come in and give us your questions. Right, an hour. Blimey, that went quickly. So probably good time to call it, I guess. Thanks to you both for today, and Sam, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. We'll wrap it up and put it under the Christmas tree. I've had such a lovely time with both of you. It's always lovely doing it with my family, but you guys are my extended family now, and it's equally as lovely, if not sometimes more so, because you guys let me do whatever I want, and I like that. But yeah, thanks for having me. I always love it.
No worries. Skibby, good to see you. And any final thoughts?
No, nothing. Just looking forward to Anfield. Hopefully your prediction comes true, and I'm absolutely ecstatic come Saturday evening. But we'll see. Unfortunately, I can't head up there due to prior engagements and other things. But I will make it to Anfield one day. It's been about 4 years, I think, since I've been to Anfield.
I haven't been
COVID times.
I haven't been in a long time, I must admit. I wanted to get up for the Cup semi-final last year. I can't remember why I couldn't go. There was a legitimate reason, but it's escaping me now. I know my friend Michael's going up there and his dad Artie, so I'm sure if my prediction comes true, they'll have a lovely day.
Well, I live in Melbourne, so I'm not getting there anytime soon. Unless you guys want to fund that, like let's start a GoFundMe to get Sam there, and I'll send selfies that will justify it.
We could put a fee.
Discord. Huh?
We could put a fee on the Just Ask Sam questions.
Oh yeah,
That might be the way to
money
do it
for my own charity.
I think what we do, we send Sam with a camera and a microphone to go interview the players, almost like Tubes, like from Soccer AM, just asking them the Sam questions. How good would that be?
Just nothing about football. Just nothing about football. Just me being like various players' clairvoyance.
Brilliant. Okay, well, on that note, we'll call it a day. I'm sure we'll be back early next week with our post-match analysis on the Liverpool game. We'll also do a preview for Southampton next week as well, so keep an eye out for those. Thanks, everyone, for following along in the comments and giving us your questions. We tried to get to as many as we could. Let's look forward to a good Saturday, and everyone praying my prediction comes true. Come on, you Whites.